Hi there, my name is Katherine Silva, Kat for short, and I am going to be reading you a selection from my novella Hallowed Oblivion, which takes place on Halloween, so enjoy. 8 p.m. Hiking Franconia Ridge was like crawling along the spine of some enormous beast. Its jagged rocks made the exposed trail treacherous. After summiting Mount Lafayette and then Lincoln, Hank and Castle headed toward Little Haystack Mountain with heads down, watching their footing and fighting the gusts that barreled into them. The wind was a constant soft roar in Hank's ears. He thought about Evie the whole time as he plunged his trekking poles into the earth with each step. By now, if all had gone according to plan, they would have been returning home for bedtime. He wondered what Melissa had done for Evie that night. Had they played games? Watched spooky films? What did they do for dinner? Was Melissa's house even decorated inside for Halloween? Hey! Hank stopped and looked back at Castle. He pointed at the trail ahead of them. All at once, Hank's self-calm broke and his lungs collapsed. A body lay face down in the middle of the trail. Scrambling over the rocks, Hank threw himself down in front of it. As he scanned the head down along the torso and the arms for injuries, he stopped at the waistline. Ribbons of fabric and flesh draped over the rocks and ended in a spray of blood where the leg should have been. He turned the body over with hesitation. The corpse's face came into view. Hank's throat closed as he reeled over onto his back. The teenage boy's eyes had rolled up into his head to reveal the whites, though the sockets were stretched so wide they seemed to swallow each one in their vastness. His mouth stiffened into a horrifying gape, lips pulled back and split in places to fully expose his teeth and gums. The skin seemed an unusual pale even for the environment, the color of glistening metal under frost. "Breathe, Hank," Castle said over and over, his voice now directly overhead, hand clamped on his shoulder. The sound of his voice washed in and out with the wind. The hood on the boy's sweater flapped around wildly in the gusts. Finally, air plunged down into his gut, and Hank gulped it down. Holy shit. Holy shit. Castle scuttled over to inspect the body, and jerked away, coughing into his fist so hard that his whole body spasmed. Hank fumbled with the GPS on his belt and marked the location, his eyes barely leaving the body. Castle crawled back to Hank. He doesn't have a backpack, and no jacket. Probably ran from the campsite. A bear tracked him all the way out here, onto the exposed ridge. Hank didn't say anything. There was no way to determine when this had happened, other than it had probably not been during the day, when people were still actively hiking on the ridge. It had to have been after dark, perhaps no less than an hour ago. There was a chance others were still alive. It also meant the chance of an enraged animal close by. Gathering themselves, the men pressed on, leaving the boy's body behind. "You said black bears were non-aggressive," Castle said, close behind. "Well, so am I, but if you do something to piss me off, guess what? That changes. Tell me you've got that can of bear spray ready. Usually you'll hear the bear before you see it. You'll have a warning." Castle scoffed. "Are you kidding me? With all this shit blowing around, you expect us to hear a bear snorting?" A scream pierced the darkness, riding on the gusts and floating up into the heavens. The hair on Hank's arms prickled. "Let's go." Little Haystack Mountain loomed ahead, the last open rocky expanse on the ridgeline. Ahead of them, the Franconia Ridge Trail resumed down into the whisking trees, while to their right, the Falling Waters Trail dropped down the mountain back toward Franconia Notch. For several moments, Hank's cowardice bucked inside. He wanted to wait for the search and rescue team to meet them before they continued. More people might be a safer way to continue forward, especially if there was a bear waiting for them at Shimmering Rock. But that scream. Those kids needed him now. He couldn't wait. He also recognized there hadn't been another scream after the first. Fuck, 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 Hank chanted to himself as they continued ahead into the forest. All at once, the trees enshrouded like a closing mouth, and the brutal wind diminished. Branches quaked overhead, their last clinging leaves like teeth chittering all around them. Hank pulled his gaiter up over his nose, trying to keep his breath from obscuring his vision. It was darker here in the woods, and his headlamp, though powerful, barely cut through it, like shining a flashlight through crude oil. "Which direction did that scream come from?" Castle whispered. "It's hard to tell. Sounds bounce around in here like crazy." They made it a few more steps, their boots crunching on loose twigs and crispy leaves. In the gloom ahead, a shriek made Hank's head swim with terror. "That's Shimmering Rock. Off to the—" Another cry lifted up from their far right. "They're separated," Castle said, a quiver in his voice. Hank whirled to him. "I'll go to Shimmering Rock. You check out the other one." "I've got nothing to defend myself." "There's only one bear. 2 screams. It can't be in both places at once." "Bears can run, Hank, and I don't know if you noticed, but I'm not much of a runner anymore." Squatting, Hank slung his pack off and unzipped the brain of the bag, yanking out the bear spray. He shoved it into Castle's arms. "Not that it'll do much good if a bear is running at you." Then he ran, leaving Castle behind. This was stupid. He was stupid for rushing into danger like this. He should have sent the GPS signal back there when he'd had a moment to think. But he was triggered by the scream, by the idea that someone might have been actively dying while he stood there and did nothing. Hank clambered down some natural rock steps and grabbed at the trunk of an ash tree to keep his footing on the moss. The Shimmering Rock marker appeared out of the haziness before him, along with pained whimpering. Hank barely braced himself before he darted down the short path toward the rock. Thank you guys so much, and happy Halloween.